Hello everyone, it's Charles Watts here, Arsenal correspondent at Goal, back for another video, and I've been promising to do this one for a while, one of my Q&As. It's been a few weeks now since my last one. I said it last week, didn't get around to doing it. I put a message out on Twitter this week, and I've got the time to do it. You've got plenty of questions in, I've got them in front of me here, so yeah, forgive me if I keep looking down away from the screen. But I'll be going through all these questions and trying to answer as many of them as I can. As I always say when I do these Q&As, if I don't do your question, it's not that I'm ignoring you or anything like that. It's just because I've probably covered it elsewhere, because some of the questions that have come in have obviously been about the same sort of things, and rather than just repeating myself and boring the hell out of you by going over the same thing over and over again, I just probably just do one of them and then and move through. So that's how it's going to go. And just to start off again, as usual, hope you're all well, hope you're all coping with the situation we're all in at the moment. We're getting there, slowly, touch wood. Yeah, obviously, I hope you and your family and everyone like that is doing well, and you're not struggling too much for being cooped up in our houses and looking out at the nice weather out there. Although saying that, it's been raining a lot the last 24 hours, but nice out there at the moment. Nice to go out there and sit down, have a beer, get ready for the weekend, but not to be. But anyway, enough of that. I will get straight onto this because I'm sure it's going to go on a while. Like I said, I've got plenty of questions in, covering a wide range of topics. Obviously, a lot about transfers, always away. Although saying that as a disclaimer right at the start, I don't think you should be expecting too much when it comes to transfers and Arsenal this summer, just to let you know. But I'll talk about all that and more during this meeting. So yeah, plenty about transfers, but then obviously lots about other the financial situation, what's going on with coronavirus, helps. Just some about Mikel Arteta and various other things. So I'll try and get through them as best I can, and let's go get cracking. What we got first up from the Arsenal Supporters Club. How good do you think Mikel Arteta can be as Arsenal manager, and what has he done as a manager that has surprised you? Well, I mean, I've not hidden my admiration for Mikel Arteta since he came in. I was on board the Arteta train before he arrived, pulled into the station. To be honest, I really wanted him. This time, I'd kind of bought into it last time before Emery arrived, even with his lack of experience. But I really had done this time when Emery had gone. I thought Arteta was the right man to bring in and rebuild Arsenal. It just his youthful experience, youthful energy. Having worked with Pep as well, which a lot of people sort of fobbed off as, oh, he was only his assistant putting the cones out. You speak to anyone at Manchester City and it wasn't the case at all. So I was really excited about what he can bring, and I think he's done fantastic so far. And I think he can go on and be an excellent manager. I really do. Speak to all of the Arsenal players about him, and they're not just trotting out the same usual quotes they do to journalists just to sort of get you off their back and they can head off home. They really do admire Mikel Arteta. They've been really impressed with what he's brought to the table since he arrived at Arsenal. They love his training sessions. They love his passion. They love the sort of the fresh ideas that he's brought to the club. And I think he's going to be an excellent manager. I think Arsenal made a really good choice, and especially in kind of what Arsenal need right now. It needs a big rebuild. The whole place for me needs a big shake up. They've got to turn to get some younger players in and build them. They've got some excellent young players as well, as we've all seen this season. And I think Arteta's the perfect man to mould them all together, and just wash away the gloom that the last few years have been, the last couple of years under Arsene. And then the last year under Arsene, we obviously won the FA Cup the year before that, so I can't really say that was doom and gloom, because it was certainly a fun end to that season. But certainly Arsenal's last season and then Unai's last season and a half weren't exactly much fun. So I think Arteta's a perfect man to wash away that gloom and take Arsenal into a new sort of era, really. There's another question from the Arsenal Sports Club here. What 5 players do you think from the current squad MA is most excited about getting to reach their potential? I'm not sure I can really think of 5. I mean, there's plenty. I know he loves Reece Nelson. He really does rate Reece Nelson. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with Reece, because obviously he plays mainly in the same position Nicolas Pepe, who Arsenal invested a lot of money in. And there's certainly been flashes of how good Pepe can be in his first season. But when Arteta first arrived, he was actually preferring Nelson. Nelson started those first few games under Arteta before he got injured, and it'll be interesting to see how he utilises him next season, or whenever the season does start again. He really rates. I mean, he loves Saka, he loves Martinelli, those sort of players. really can see what he'll be able to do with those over the coming years. So I think they're certainly three. I know you asked for five there, but I think they're the three that really stand out: Saka, Nelson, and Martinelli. I think he really does like them, and thinks they can be excellent players. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with Kieran Tierney as well. I have to say, I think Tierney's going to be an excellent player under Arteta. Mike's son says, can you talk about the financial situation at Arsenal at the moment? Players that could arrive in Saka and Auba. Well, the financial situation at Arsenal is, it's pretty horrible. It's pretty stark. We've seen that in the last couple of weeks with what's going on. Arsenal are facing a massive, not just Arsenal, everyone's facing a real massive financial black hole at the moment because of what's going on and because of the uncertainty. The match day income is a real issue for Arsenal. That's 24% of their annual revenue comes from match day income, and obviously they're going to play the next end of this season. If it does start up again behind closed doors, they're going to have to give out over about £10 million in refunds to fans for the 4 games they're not going to be able to attend this season, and then no one knows how long next season's going to have to be behind closed doors. Everyone that I speak to, no one expects there to be fans inside stadiums for the rest of 2020. So you're looking at January 2021 as the earliest that fans can really start being expected to come back into the stadium. But even that could be pushing it, and that's a massive loss for Arsenal. The Arsenal Supporters Trust, I don't know if you've seen it, they've done a study sort of looking into Arsenal's finances, and they did a look at how much the club could lose if the whole of next season's behind closed doors, and they believe they've estimated that Arsenal would end up suffering a loss of around 144 million because of loss of matchday revenue, because of the effects it would have on sponsorship and commercial revenue, things like that. And they estimate a loss of 144 million pounds for Arsenal. So that says it all. At the moment, Arsenal got some cash reserves in the banks, but they haven't got much. And this is the time of year when normally they'd be topping up those cash reserves because season ticket money would be coming in. Right now, it'd be coming in for club level and executive boxes. Then from next month, the general admission season ticket money would be coming in. But at the moment, those aren't even on sale and they're suspended because no one knows, if anyone's going to be able to watch any games next season. So the cash reserves are just going to be plummeting all the time. They've got to keep a certain amount in the cash reserves as covenant for loan on the stadium, which I think is around sort of £30 million. And it's certainly looking like they're going to need financial support. They've got an overdraft system with the banks. They've got that they can dip into. Never dipped into it before, but they can do. Obviously, the owner can put money in himself in some ways to cover what's going on. So there are ways around it, but Arsenal financially are going to be really struggling because of what's going on at the moment. And it's not just Arsenal; it's all clubs, but. Arsenal's wage bill obviously being £230 million a year is a huge weight around their shoulders. The players have taken some of those cut. They've taken a 12.5%, or some of the players, most of the players have taken a 12.5% cut for 12 months. But obviously, if Arsenal go on and qualify for the Europa League, that comes down to 7.5%. If they go on and qualify for the Champions League, then that wage cut doesn't happen at all. So. And that's not even that's not going to make much of an impact. So they're struggling. That's why. And when you talk here about players who could arrive, you have to temper your expectations. Arsenal are suffering so much at the moment financially. There's so much uncertainty going on that I just don't see any real business being done this summer. I really struggle to see it. I know that's not going to be what a lot of people want to hear, but you've got to factor in the situation. It's not just going to be Arsenal. Very few clubs are going to be able to do much business. Yes, you've got the Man City, Chelsea, clubs like that with the owners that they've got, Paris Saint-Germain, who could potentially spend, cope with this and spend relatively big still. Manchester United, just because of the absolute commercial juggernaut that they are and the money they generate as well. But most clubs are not going to be able to do much. The amount of agents that I've been speaking to, people in the industry, people who know exactly what's going on, people at Arsenal, everyone is saying, look, this market is going to be virtually non-existent. It's going to be loan deals, sort of clever loan deals having to be done, free transfers, are going to be like gold dust. And people are just going to have to really temper their expectations. Arsenal have got interested in an awful lot of players. The scouting department very much remains open. That's been one of the few departments that has basically carried on running throughout this whole crisis because they can do it all from home using Y-Scout and all the video analysis. So they've still got their targets. You know, Thomas Partey obviously is the name that everyone's talking about at the moment. Arsenal absolutely like Thomas Partey. They would love to bring him to Arsenal. But 50 million release clause that he has at the moment, 50 million euros, I just can't see it. And the way that the release clauses work in Spain as well, they usually have to be put out in one big lump sum to La Liga, and you know, it's not going to be like a Nicolas Pepe deal where Arsenal could stagger it over a number of years. So it's looking. I can't see Partey happening. Arsenal could make a few player sales, but the money they'd want to bring in for players or receive for players, they're just not going to get. Like Aubameyang, they're in a really difficult situation with, because I think the expectation that they were probably going to sell him this summer, because of his contract situation if he didn't sign, and now that but now the season's still going to be, if the season does start up again in June, which they're obviously working towards a June 8 restart at the moment, that he's going to be well out into the final year of his contract by the time the season finishes. So Arsenal are not going to be able to get the money in that they want for him at that point. So realistically for Arsenal, they're probably going to think, well, it's better we keep him for next season and let him go on a free rather than just take no money for him this summer and not be able to get anyone in as a replacement. So financially, they're really struggling. You're looking at free transfers. People like Kurzawa at PSG, who I wouldn't be a fan of that signing, but they have been looking at him. Ryan Fraser at Bournemouth, you know, a player who, in a way, he's going to come out of this pretty well, because Arsenal have been looking at him for a while. Not just Arsenal, but a lot of clubs have been looking at him. He only had a year left in his contract. He sort of went off the boil a little bit at the beginning of this season because he's admitted it himself. His sort of head was turned by what was going on. But he's come back to form a little bit before the break in play, and he's suddenly going to be really, really appealing to a lot of clubs now because he's a free transfer. And so I think that's what clubs are going to be working on, the free transfer market and the loan market as well. I think it's going to be what most clubs are operating in. So I'd just temper your expectations when it comes to Arsenal. I know it's exciting to think about Thomas Partey, to think about Upamecano at Leipzig, players like that, but I just think it's difficult. Arsenal, like I said, they've got the players who want. Axel Disasi at over in France, they really like him. I mean, he'd be relatively cheap, but even still, I'm just not sure. These are players they probably would have looked to brought in. Orkan Koçu at Feyenoord, young attacking midfielder, player they really like, player they've watched a lot this season, available about sort of £20 million. Now, before the whole pandemic, before the whole money well just ran dry, that's deals that Arsenal would have been able to do, or you certainly hope they would have been able to do, but now just not so sure. Money's going to be really, really tight. There is the option, obviously, Arsenal could go on and qualify for the Champions League if the season does start up again. If that happens, then they'll put them in a much better financial position, and they will hopefully be able to do an awful lot more than they would right now. But if it ends now, and there is a realistic option that it could end now, and Arsenal, remember, are ninth, they wouldn't even get in the Europa League spot for next season, so they wouldn't even get the money to come in from the Europa League. And if that happens, which is very much the worst case scenario, I think Arsenal's transfer dealings, you've got to expect there's not going to be much at all happening this summer, I'm afraid. So that's a very long answer to that question from Mike's son. Sorry, but it covered an awful lot of things. So I thought I'd go into that a little bit. Sam, I've just talked about Ryan Fraser. Sam asks, the links with the potential signing of Ryan Fraser seem to be dividing the fan base right now, and I'm interested to see your take on it. Personally, I think he'd be a really solid player, but seemingly the majority of others are turning their nose up at him. No, I like Ryan Fraser. I think he's a good player. I think he didn't help himself with his form at the start of this season, and he's admitted since that he let his head get turned a little bit by the links to Arsenal and what was going on last year. So he didn't help himself, but I thought he was coming back to form before the shutdown happened. And I don't think he'd be a bad signing at all. And I think he'd be a squad player, which maybe you look at it and think, do Arsenal really need that right now, a squad player? Because they've got a lot of good young players, and that's the thing. I don't want signings to come in just for the sake of it, that are going to block the pathway of some of Arsenal's young players. You know, Saka. Yeah, if you think of Ryan Fraser, he's, you know, what, left winger. You think of him left winger. You've got Bukayo Saka there. Play Bukayo Saka left wing. You've got Kieran Tierney. You can come in at left back. So play Saka further upfield. Obviously, Aubameyang's playing there at the moment. So you know, I wouldn't be against the addition of Ryan Fraser, especially on a free transfer. But I just think, for me, the way Arsenal are operating right now, the difficulties financially that they have, the focus has got to be on continuing to play the young players and improving them. And there's so much talent there. Even Reece Nelson can play on the left-hand side. So I'm not sure it's a necessity for Arsenal, but it, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if it went on to happen. I can't see what this guy's name is, I'm afraid. It's just his name appears to be the American flag, TM. Asked, do you think Auba will sign? Because I'm not so sure. I wish I could have a crystal ball on this one. I don't think no one knows the answer to this. I think all the signs are that he won't, or have been that he won't. But given what's suddenly going on now with the pandemic and everything like that, it could completely change things for him, because in his ideal world, I'm sure this summer was the summer he would have got a move because of his age. He would have gone with a year left on his contract. Arsenal would have got some money for him, and he could have gone to a Madrid or a Barcelona if they'd have come in for him. But now that just looks unlikely that's going to happen, given what I spoke about before, given the money, given Arsenal probably aren't going to get a sort of bid that they think's worthwhile and accept him for Aubameyang, so he'll stay another year. You know, and Auba will be older then, and some obviously clubs will still want to get him because he's a striker, and they'll be able to, there won't be a transfer fee involved, so they will be able to offer a decent enough contract. But security wise, he might be set. You know, if he signed a new long-term deal at Arsenal, then you know, he loves London. It might be a better option for him. So it might be changing things a little bit. I think Arsenal, a lot of people at Arsenal expect Aubameyang, certainly were expecting Aubameyang to go this summer. I'm not sure that will happen now, just because of, as I said, because of all the situation that's taken place. But I still think, if you're asking me, do I think Auba will sign? I'd say, as it stands, and from people that I've been speaking to, I'd say no. Whether that means he'll leave this summer, though, I'm not so sure anymore, because of the pandemic and the delay in the season ending and things like that. Met asks, are Arsenal likely to have any money to spend on transfers whenever the window opens, or are we more likely to see free transfers? Fraser, Cedric, Willian, cheap deals, Pablo Mari. I've kind of obviously covered this, but yeah, as you sort of hinted there, Met, I think the free transfers, as I've said, obviously we've got Cedric as well. That's another player who they could get on a free transfer if they want. You can come in as cover for right back. Or even take on right back, because I'm not sure any of us are convinced at the moment, from what we've seen from Hector Bellerin, that he is that he has the not fitness, that's the wrong word, but it just looks a little bit like his legs have gone. I don't want to write him off too early, because it was a serious injury, and sometimes it takes almost a year to come back. Once you're actually back playing again, it takes another year for you to get to full fitness after a cruciate ligament injury. So I don't want to write Hector off too much, because he's an excellent player when he's fit. But what we've seen so far, we're not so sure. I don't think anyone can be totally sure that he's going to be back to his best. So maybe Cedric is a good option, but we just haven't seen enough of it. We haven't seen any of him since he's come in. So it's quite hard to convince a club to buy you on a permanent basis when you've not even played a game for them. I think the Pablo Mari deal will happen. I'll be surprised if it doesn't, just because he's, you know, Arteta's wanted a left-sided centre-back for an awful long time. They've already paid a fair amount of money to Flamengo to get him in on loan. They're not going to cost too much to get him on a permanent basis. I think Arteta likes him. The fact that when he was fit, he's almost come straight into the team. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think that Mari will happen, and possibly another centre back as well, but that all depends financially. So, yeah, Met, answer your question, I think we're more likely to see free transfers. Like Willian as well. The only thing with Willian is his wages. It's a lot of money. I still think he's a good player. I still think he's got a lot to offer, and I wouldn't be against Willian coming to Arsenal. I'm just not the position they're in at the moment. The last thing they need is another ageing player on a massive wage bill. And as I said before, I'd much rather see the younger players given more game time, more time for Reece Nelson, things like that. Hand of Arteta, Aid asked about Arsenal financial situation. I've got into that, so I'm not going to answer it all again, Aid, but I hope my previous answers have answered your question on that. One sec. I need a nice cup of tea to get me through this. lots of questions. I'm not ignoring this. There's lots of questions. Like Rob here asked about KSC putting cash into the club through the current financial situation. What is the current situation on this? And any ideas how much it would be, and would it be used for player purchases? Rob, it won't be used for player purchases. Stan Kroenke's not going to put. Sorry, I'm just looking out the window. It's biblical rain starting to fall. KSC Stan Kroenke's not going to put a lot of money in for player purchases this summer. He has committed to helping Arsenal get through this situation. He's underwriting various commitments that they've got financially, so he will be helping in terms of money and underwriting certain things. But in terms of giving them suddenly a big wad of cash to go out and spend on the transfer market, that's not going to happen. The priority at Arsenal right now is just not transfers. Raul Sanlai and Vinay Venkatesham, they always hold these sort of weekly calls with club staff at the moment over Zoom video calls, just updating them on the whole situation. And the one this week, they basically said, they tell club staff, look, don't expect too much from the transfer market. It's not our priority at the moment. Our priority is ensuring Arsenal survive this horrible spell, which they've already said is one of the most challenging in the club's history. That's the priority right now. It's not really the transfer market. So yeah, just don't expect big money deals. That's the message coming out of Arsenal at the moment. I think it's one you've got to take and be realistic about. There's lots. I did go through these questions before. I didn't actually realise just how many of them are about transfers. So it seems very transfer money orientated, I'm afraid. Like Isaac says, if Arsenal make the right player sales such as Torreira, Bellerin, Socrates, Lacazette, can we dream of bidding for such players as Partey and Aarons, and maybe a centre back? I think ideally Arsenal would. Some of those players you mentioned, I think Torreira could well have gone this summer. Lacazette potentially could well have gone this summer, but I just think, as I mentioned before, I'm not sure the clubs who would have been willing to pay the transfer fees that Arsenal wanted for those players, I'm not sure they're going to be able to do it now. That's the effect that it's having on the transfer window. It's not just Arsenal, but across the board. That's the effect it's going to have on the transfer window. That's why the transfer window is going to be so quiet this summer, apart from, like I said, loan deals and very cheap deals, because buying clubs who want to buy aren't going to have the money, the free and available cash to do it, and players they were open to selling, clubs who might have bought them aren't going to have the money to buy them. So that's the situation Arsenal are in, and so that's why you talk about Partey and Max Aarons, a right back Arsenal do like at Norwich, and maybe a centre back like I've mentioned, Axel Disasi in France. But because of the money situation, I'm just not sure it's gonna. I'm not sure it's gonna happen. Sorry to be the voice of doom and gloom. I'm sure there will be some activity, but in terms of real big money deals, I just don't see it happening. Not from what I'm being told by agents and people working in the industry. What they're expecting this summer, it just doesn't stand up. There'll be a few big deals done because some of the clubs can afford it. Manchester City, PSG. I'm sure those clubs will still be able to splash multi-million pounds to bring in players. Ed Woodward at Man United's already said that he thinks the club is still well positioned to be able to be strong in the transfer market this summer. But at Arsenal, it's a different story, I'm afraid. Wayne asks, what would be the Saliba situation? His loan has ended with the PL potentially extending. Is there a chance or a loophole where he could play? I don't think so. I've been exploring this week actually, and I've still not got a firm answer from either the Premier League or Arsenal on it. Arsenal say that he's registered to Saint-Etienne until June the 30th, so he wouldn't be able to play before that. But obviously the league looks like if it does start up again, we'll go beyond that. So there's a chance then, you'd think, he might be able to play in the games after that, so potentially the games in July if there's say 4 or 5 games left to play, because he was registered in the Premier League squad by Arsenal this season at the start in the summer when he signed. But then I'm hearing from other people that because of the way the transfer went through, that he definitely can't play until the next season starts. So I've just not got a clear answer in it. I'm still waiting for a response from the Premier League on it. They said they're looking into it and should be able to give me some clarity on the situation. But as it stands, I'm told no, he won't be able to, but there have been varying points of opinion on that from people I've spoke to, and I think it sort of sums up the confusion that's going on around at the moment when it comes to players potentially ending their loans early, or players who are out of contract on June 30th staying with a club like Cedric, for example, and playing on even though he's out of contract. There's so much confusion between everyone at the moment, agents, players, the clubs, about what can happen, that no one really knows an answer to it. such a strange situation. Eldovino says, you never replied to any of my questions, tweets, Charles. Any reason why? I'm a big fan of what you do. And then he's followed that up with one a day later saying my point exactly, because I hadn't replied. Sorry about that, Eldovino. But if you actually look through all of these questions I haven't replied from, I've just asked for the questions to come in so that I can go through them when I do this video and talk about them. It's not that I'm ignoring you, it's just that I haven't responded to anyone other than my brother on this stream, because my brother came up with a ridiculously stupid response. So no, I'm not ignoring you. I try and reply to plenty of tweets when I can, but you know, I get an awful lot of them. So sometimes I don't even see them. If I haven't looked at my phone for like 2 or 3 hours, so I'm away from my desk or away from my computer or away from my phone, you know, I miss an awful lot of tweets. So it's not that I'm ignoring you at all. And I do try to reply to people. So no, I'm not ignoring you, I promise. Eldovino, please do keep tweeting me. I will get back to you. Anthony asked about the Partey links and Orbit situation. I've already talked about that, so I'm not going to go through it again. He also asked, has Arteta fully recovered? Yes, he has. He's fully recovered. He's fine. Thankfully, he's working. I'm sure you've seen videos from him on Arsenal posted on their website, and little interviews they've done with him. He's working from home, as everyone is, working hard. And yes, he's fully recovered. He also asked which positions we're prioritising in the transfer window. And before the pandemic, it was certainly centre-back, possibly two centre-backs, because like I said, I think Mari will come in. And then they were looking at Axel Disasi, as I've said, in France, at Stade Reims, this box-to-box midfielder, absolutely a big priority. That's why Thomas Partey has been linked so heavily, and there is interest in Thomas Partey, as I've mentioned, but I don't think it's going to be possible to get that deal done now. And then you're looking at the strikers as well. Jonathan David, someone they're looking at, depending on what happens with Aubameyang. So those are the main areas. Right back as well. So those are the sort of main areas that they're prioritising in the window. What we got? Jordan says, what is it with the constant media rhetoric that Arsenal are on the verge of financial collapse, especially their view that only Arsenal seem to be affected by the COVID situation? I do agree. It's strange that I think Arsenal have been so in the news about this and other clubs haven't. But I think it's because Arsenal have been leading the way, to be honest. So they've been the talking point. No one else has agreed pay cuts yet. Arsenal have. So they were the big talking point about pay cuts, just because no one else was even really been discussing it. But Arsenal have been leading the way in that, and they've got a pay cut done. So that's why they were dominating the headlines when it came to that story, just because they're the only club who did it. So I think that's the main reason they've been doing that. They've been in the headlines just because they've been leading the way in the whole thing, and they've been trying to get this get on top of things from the start. I think of the big clubs, Arsenal are the worst position just because they've been out of the Champions League for 3 years. They're out of the Champions League spots at the moment as well. They're out of the Europa League spots at the moment, and they've just announced a couple of months ago a very big loss, their first loss since 2002. That's why I think there's been a lot of focus as well on the financial situation at Arsenal, just because I think they're more precariously placed because of how long they've been out of the Champions League than the other top 6 clubs. Quarantine Guna says, with Lacazette and Aubameyang potentially leaving, who's the club looking for potential replacements? Like I said, Jonathan David is a forward that they're looking at Genk, young forward, Canadian forward, good player. Edouard up at Celtic as well is someone they've been keeping tabs on this season. But as I've mentioned as well, I'm not so sure Lacazette and Aubameyang will definitely leave this summer. Certainly not both of them. So I don't know if anyone will even have to come in, because they might keep both their strikers, and they've obviously got a lot of faith in Eddie Nketiah as well, as was shown before the shutdown. A couple more questions here on Ryan Fraser and Thomas Partey. I'm not going to answer those just because, as I've said, I've already answered them before. Tom says, will Arsenal look to Brazil as a market, which they have an advantage and get good value? I think they will look more and more to Brazil for the market, just because obviously you've got Edu there now as technical director. He knows the market very, very well. He's got good contacts with so many agents over there. We've already seen with Pablo Mari deal coming in. We saw Martinelli before that, but that obviously wasn't Edu. That was Francis Cagial, who Arsenal's head of international recruitment, who's got amazing contacts over in South America. Raul Sanai as well has also got very good contacts in South America. So I certainly think that's a market that Arsenal will look to exploit over the next couple of years once the situation all calms down a little bit. And like you said as well there, Tom, you could potentially get a little bit of decent value there, which you wouldn't get certainly in Europe. So yeah, I think it is a market they'll look to more and more. Holding Rob says, "Morning, Charles. Do you think we can have Reece Nelson at right wing for long term rather than go out and buy an expensive winger?" Well, we've already gone out and bought an expensive winger, and he's playing at right wing at the moment. That's Nicolas Pepe, and I think there's so much more to come from Nicolas Pepe. I know a lot of people have been a little bit disappointed with him this season, but I still think, and certainly just before in the weeks leading up to the shutdown, he was beginning to play pretty well. He was beginning to score goals. He was contributing assists as well. And there is a player there in Nicolas Pepe. You can see it. You can see how talented he is. He's just very rough, and he's a rough diamond almost that you've got to mould into the all-round player. And I think in Mikel Arteta, he's got a manager who will work really hard with him to get him to improve, to work on the side of his games which aren't so good. His left foot, for example, which I think is pretty weak. His right foot, for example, which I think is pretty weak, and he's always having a cut in on his left foot. And that's a flaw. It's a definite flaw because players know that. Players will learn that. Defenders will learn that. So they'll always be showing him out on the right-hand side, and that's not ideal if he's wanting to cut in on the left all the time. So I think he needs to improve on certain things, but his ability to run with the ball at his feet, to beat defenders, his delivery as well from set pieces and from open play is very, very good. And he gets himself in good positions. So I think there's a really good player there in Nicolas Pepe, and I know obviously Reece Nelson you asked about there saying sort of long term, but I still think Pepe is the player that Arsenal will really look to improve and nail down that spot on the right wing over the coming years. Potentially, Reece could go over on the left as well, but I think I still think Reece has got a big part to play. Like I said, Arteta rates him highly. I'm not sure at the moment though if he's ahead of Pepe in the sort of long-term plan when it comes to right wing. What does your ideal back four look like next season when healthy? What happens when a player like Holding never really get a fair shot? So this is a question from Colby. I'll start with the Holding thing. Yeah, I agree with Holding. I think he was really unlucky, Holding, that in January he needed a loan. He needed to go out on a loan deal and just get some regular playing time because he wasn't playing at Arsenal. And when he had played, he played against Leeds, didn't he? He had a really bad game against Leeds in the FA Cup. Just looked rusty, which is not surprising given how long he's been out for. But because Arsenal had some injuries at centre-back at that time in January, they couldn't afford to let him go out on loan. And obviously when the window closed, they'd just brought in Mari as well. And Holding again was just not getting a look in after that. I think he needs a good season on loan. Basically what Callum Chambers did when he went to Fulham, I think Rob Holding needs next season. I absolutely wouldn't sell Rob Holding yet. I think he's a very good defender. We saw how good he was before he got the injury. When he was a regular in the team, he was excellent. And I think he's good on the ball as well. I think he's got the attributes to be a player that Mikel Arteta likes. So I wouldn't write him off completely just yet. I think he just needs to have a good season-long loan next season, go somewhere, play regularly, just play 12 months of regular football, and then come back to Arsenal and see what happens. So I think that's the best thing for Holding next season. What my ideal back four looks like. It's tough. I mean, I don't. Obviously you got William Saliba. I haven't seen enough of Saliba, but what I have seen of him, I'm really excited. So I'd say Saliba, probably Pablo Mari as the two centre backs next season, just because I think that operates well. You'd have Saliba on the right and Mari on the left with his left foot, and I'd have Kieran Tierney left back. And if fit and healthy, and up to it in terms of his running ability, Hector Bellerin, if he can have a really good pre-season behind him next season in the summer, but you're just not sure because we don't even know what pre-season's going to look like next summer, so it's going to be tough for Bellerin. But if he's fit and healthy, I still think Bellerin's an excellent right back, so I think that probably might well be it. Bellerin, Saliba, Mari, Tierney, but from what I've seen of Axel Disasi as well, I do like him, and I know that Arsenal really like him, but I'm just not sure they're going to be able to get that deal done now because of the financial situation. I think one of the two experienced centre-backs might leave, probably Socrates if he does. he's always said that he doesn't want to just be a bit part player. And if he's not going to play much next season, then maybe he will look to go out somewhere in the summer to get regular first team football. And I doubt Arsenal would stand in his way too much if that were to happen. I think Louise will stay and probably see out his contract at Arsenal. I think that's how we're looking at the centre back situation. Another question about Thomas Partey. Colin sent me a picture of my son has this shirt. Any idea who signed it? Oh, no, I can't work out who that signature is at all. That's going to annoy me as well. So please do get back to me, Colin, on that and tell me who it is, who that signature is. I can't work it out at all. Yeah, please do get back to me, Colin. Tell me who that signature is, because it's going to bug me otherwise. MAA says, what do you think Arsenal's budget would be? I can't give that answer, I'm afraid. There's so much uncertainty. Arsenal don't even know what their budget's going to be for the summer, so I certainly can't give you it. There's just various... it could be different things. Like I said, if they qualify for the Champions League, it could be up there. If they qualify for the Europa League, it could be there. If they finish 9th and the season's scrapped now and they don't even get in Europe, then it'll be down here. So it's impossible to say what Arsenal's budget will be. It's just impossible, I'm afraid, because we don't know how the season's ended yet. But it's whatever it is, it's not going to be massive. The only way they could really be able to do much in the transfer window this summer is if they get in the Champions League. Mason asks, why hasn't James Ward-Prowse been more sought after by Arsenal? All-round engine, arguably a Ramsey-style player. I mean, good shout. I'm not sure though. I'm not sure James Ward-Prowse is an Arsenal player. I think he's good. He's certainly excellent delivery-wise. I'm not sure. About. I think it's probably a reason why he's not been looked at by a lot of the top clubs. Southampton aren't a team to keep their players if they get interest from rival clubs, but there clearly hasn't been too much interest in Ward-Prowse. So I think that probably says a lot about him. He's an excellent player, fantastic player. He played really well for Southampton, but I think that's probably his level. What else we got? Dennis asked, what is the realistic expectation from board for the club over the coming 5-year period? Well, you ask them and they'll say we want to win the title, we want to get in the Champions League. That's their expectation. That's certainly Mikel Arteta's expectation as well. But it's not easy to do that, and especially when you're sort of struggling with the financial side of things as Arsenal are. So the expectation is certainly to be as good as Arsenal can possibly be, but living up to that expectation isn't always easy. Oh, that tea's cold now. Not very nice. Akwi asked about Bukayo Saka and his contract situation. Is he going to sign a new contract? Well, Arsenal certainly hope so. I think Saka's sort of waiting out a little bit. He's in a very good position. He knows that. His representatives knows that. There's very strong interest in him, not just from in England, but from in Germany as well. Borussia Dortmund are looking at him a lot, and that's a very appealing option for Saka and for many English players at the moment. Arsenal will be loath to lose him. They'll be kicking themselves if they don't get him to sign a new deal. The fact that Arteta's been playing him regularly, and Emery was playing him regularly before that, they know how good he is. They want him to stay. It's just about getting it done at the moment. As far as I'm aware, I don't think that they're any closer now than they were before the shutdown to getting him to sign a new contract. Just because their focus has been on a lot of other things at the moment. But they're certainly going to hope to try and tie him down. Whenever I've spoken to Mikel Arteta about it as well, he's seemed fairly confident that they will get a deal done. It's a similar situation to Reiss Nelson before Reiss went out and had his loan spell in Germany, and he did sign a new deal then. People were beginning to worry that they were going to lose Reiss Nelson, but he did sign, and I think Saka might be in the same situation. He's got a good thing at Arsenal. He's been here a lot of years. He's playing in the first team, playing regularly, playing well, and I think he'll end up signing. But I don't think that they're closer than they were before the shutdown. So I don't think anything's imminent. A couple more questions about Ryan Fraser. Ryan Fraser seems to be very popular on this one from Halil there saying it. Would Fraser be ahead of Saka and Martinelli for the left wing position? I don't think so. Not in my view. Like I said, I think he'd be a decent squad player, but I wouldn't want to bring Fraser in and play him ahead of some of the young talent that Arsenal have got, because I think Saka's already shown this season. Just look at his numbers. Why would you play Ryan Fraser ahead of Bukayo Saka? It wouldn't make sense to me. What is Arteta's favoured formation? 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3? Well, it's interesting because he's got Mesut Ozil at the club at the moment, and I think when Mesut Ozil's there, you've got to kind of, and you're going to use him, you've got to play 4-2-3-1. I don't think he can play any other formation really. I mean, you could play, I suppose, 3 centre backs, wing backs, and then have Ozil operating as a number 10. Then, but whether Ozil's going to be a regular next season, I'm not so sure. I think it'll be his last year at the club then. I can't see him going in the summer because no one's going to sign him and pay the wages that he needs, that he wants. He'll stay in London, see out his contract, but I'm not sure he'll be a regular first team player next season. I think we'll see Ozil begin. I know Arteta's used him a lot since he's arrived, but I think probably next season we might see that his workload lessened. So we might see a little switch in formation, but certainly at the moment his favourite formation is 4-2-3-1, mainly because of Mesut Ozil. Gareth says, this regime has a massive test this summer after their statement on contracts and after the Ramsey saga. How they deal with El Neni, Ozil, Orba, Mustafi, Socrates and Saka will set the tone for much on and off the field. Talk is cheap. I agree in a way, Gareth, but I also think you have to factor in the situation. What we're going through at the moment, what everyone's going through at the moment, it's completely different. So how Arsenal deal with El Neni, Ozil, Orba, Mustafi, Socrates and Saka is going to be very different now than it was just a couple of months ago. I think they would have expected certainly to sell El Neni in the summer. They would have hoped to sell Mustafi. They would have been really pushing to get some good money in for Aubameyang if he didn't sign a new contract. But all of that is just changed massively, as I've mentioned so many times in this video already, because of the money situation. So I think it's really going to be really harsh almost to judge the regime on this summer because it's so unprecedented. It's never been seen before. The financial issues that are facing Arsenal and all clubs have, it's just, like I said, it's unprecedented. It just hasn't happened before. This is a situation that no one expected even a couple of months ago, and no one's really put any planning in place for, as we've seen, not just in football, but across the board, governments, politics, no one seems to have planned for this, and it's really hitting institutions, football clubs, businesses so hard, and it will do for a while yet. So I think it's hard to judge the hierarchy on this summer. It's certainly a lot harder than it would have been a few months ago. I think you have to take into account what's going on before you really judge them from what happens certainly in the transfer market or contracts wise. I think we're pretty much through. Samuel asked about why Arsenal are in negotiations for Partey for $5 million in February if his contract expires this season, and Watford knew this, so he didn't. To be honest, from as far as I don't think Arsenal were in negotiations for Partey in February for $5 million. I presume you mean January rather than February. I've not been told. I mean, there might have been some speculation and some stories going out about it around it a while back, but for me, I think he's at Le Havre, isn't he? And Watford have got a deal for him. I know that Arsenal have been linked with him, but it's not come from me, so I'm not sure specifically. I've never been told that Arsenal were really trying to get him, so I'm not sure. I can't really answer that because, as far as I'm aware, there hasn't really been strong interest for Arsenal in him. I've seen there's been speculation, but I've never been told from any of my sources or from anyone I've spoken to that there was direct interest from Arsenal in him. So that's really all I can say about that. All right, everyone, that's it for this Q&A. Thank you very much. I've gone through pretty much all your questions. Remember, the ones I haven't answered, I haven't ignored you. It's just the fact that they've been about things that I've already talked about. It's been very transfer dominated again today. It's quite tough to talk about transfers at the moment because of what's going on. It almost feels wrong. But it's obviously that's what people want to know about, and I've done my best to give you my opinion on how things might well be shaping up over the coming months. Sorry if I've sounded all doom and gloom, and I'm not predicting £100 million being spent, I'm afraid, but that's the way of the world at the moment. I just think you've got to temper your expectations when it comes to the transfer market and what Arsenal may or may not do. But anyway, look, have a great weekend. It's Friday now. I'll get this uploaded as quickly as I possibly can. Have a fantastic weekend as best as you can. I hope you and your family and everyone are well and stay well. And thank you again for watching my videos. If you haven't yet, please do hit the subscribe button, which is somewhere down there. And I will come back and do one of these again in the not too distant futures. Thank you very much for watching, and have a very good weekend.